All right. What is our last question, Kat?
Okay. Our last one is from at CFB Nerds.
Mm.
What if Nebraska wasn't forced to stop taking partial qualifiers in the 90s?
Ooh. All right. Shout out CFB Nerds. Also on the YouTubes, my friends Daniel and Josh. They do an outstanding job. They got for real day jobs, and this is what they do for fun. And I can't even fathom just that. But I think this one comes from Daniel in that because he's been fascinated with Nebraska and what has happened to it since. Remember when I said I was going to talk about Nebraska? This is that time. So I think we need to start with what was Nebraska in the 90s? A juggernaut. The way you think about Alabama today was Nebraska in the 90s. Okay. Like, let me walk this out for you so that you understand what it exactly is that Tom Osborne and Nebraska were doing at the time, because I don't think I used to say, I don't think we're going to see anything like it ever again. And then Alabama popped up. But in 1996, they won, or 95 going into 96, they won a national championship over Florida and Steve Spurrier, who at the time was a really good football team. They're basically Clemson, right? In the mid 90s. Nebraska had become the first team to win back-to-back national championships, consensus national championships, I should say, in 39 years in 1995. Okay. And they did it with running a triple option. Tommy Frazier was half the offense by himself. Okay. They had fallen just 3 points short of being the first team to finish with 3 consecutive national titles, consensus, right? And that was in a loss to Florida State that was 18-16 in the 1994 Orange Bowl. Okay. The Cornhuskers were so dominant that they sort of kind of created a problem within the NCAA. And I'm going to tell you, 1996, what a time to be alive, because Tim Layden wrote a really great piece about Nebraska and how Prop 48 is going to be its downfall, which is the forcing them not to take partial scholarships. And I'm going to explain that right now. So you need to know what a partial scholarship and what Prop 48 was designed to do. Okay. This is also the thing that threatened Nebraska's supremacy once they got into the Big 12, because the Big 12 members said out loud, hey, we don't think Nebraska should be allowed to do what they're doing. All right. What were they doing? They were using the Prop 48 or partial qualifier rule to their benefit. And the partial qualifier is a prospective athlete who meets only 2 of the minimum academic requirements. This is, again, in 1995-96, has since changed. Grade point average or standardized test score, right? That's one of them you got to meet. The minimums are a 2.0 GPA with a 900 SAT score before they change the stats and the numbers, or a 21 on the ACT, or a 2.5 GPA and a 700 SAT and a 17 ACT. So basically, if you had those 2 things, you could qualify. A non-qualifier meets neither standard. So if you partially qualified, Nebraska was willing to take a risk on you and put you on scholarship. Okay. Then going into the inaugural season of the Big 12, the Big 12 presidents, not Big 10, voted unanimously to limit each school to 4 partial qualifiers per year. That's 2 for the men's, 2 for the women, and no more than 1 in a single sport. Now, what does that mean for Nebraska? In the Fiesta Bowl, again, Tim Layden in Sports Illustrated, Nebraska started 4 partial non-qualifiers. They started 4. They started 4 when the Big 12 has just said, no, we're limiting you to 4 total across both male and female sports and only 1 per team. And those partial qualifiers, Michael Booker, Christian Peter, Tyrone Williams, and Jared Tomich. Y'all have to just know that and take my word for it, that Nebraska's pass rushing defense was elite as its offense was then. Okay. The thing that I thought put this over the top for me was finding out just how many of their players were not just partial qualifiers, but how many of them were on the team. So Nebraska basically had like open enrollment and was the only major university in Nebraska. And at the time, they had 141 players on their Fiesta Bowl roster. 141. This is at a time, again, when you got 85 scholarship players. They had that many dudes wanting to walk on at Nebraska. How many did Florida have in that national title game? 94 total. So they had damn near 50 more players than Florida did because of open enrollment, which LSU had for a very long time. And they were taking partial qualifiers, and it cost less than $3,000 for in-state students to go to Nebraska, right? It was affordable. But the thing that I wanted to stress here is that Prop 48 also made it wildly difficult for Black folks to go to school. Okay, this is from 1988, woefully titled or headline New York Times piece that I kid you not starts with the blacks. Don't say the Black folks, Black people, the blacks. We're not the New Zealand rugby team. Okay, but this is a quote from that article. The survey that they conducted among the NCAA identified the race of 213 of 274 recruits were disqualified in 1988 due to Prop 48. That's just 2 years after they put it in, or 77.7%. A total of 185 of those recruits were Black, 86.8%. Okay. It gets deeper. The National Collegiate Athletic Association's director for research, Ursula Walsh, hence my pause, I need to take a breath, said that Black recruits accounted for 81% of football ineligibles in 1986 and 90% in 1987, according to an NCAA survey. And yet Tom Osborne and Nebraska were finding ways to get those kids in school. So all of y'all that want to tell me that an education is priceless and that an education trumps all, we had a rule in place that limited a minority in trying to get an education, because we can get into the cultural concepts and whatnot of this. But for the most part, the math's the same. Less Black folks going to school means less Black folks going to school. And yet Nebraska would get those dudes coming from almost everywhere, including the state of Texas, Florida, wherever, and say, come play here. We will find a spot. That's what you do when you have 141 kids on your team. This is also 1996 is wild, at a time when people thought that the 85 scholarships was going to make other schools more competitive. Like, I can't stress that part enough, because the idea that you would limit scholarships and that would make this thing, a little bit more like parity is wild to me. Like, not just wild to me, but a little bit stupid to think about, because money doesn't matter and television revenue doesn't matter. But apparently they weren't thinking that way, because this is from the Tim Layden article in the SI. And I'm going to ask that this article get linked in the show notes and you can read it there, because it's a really great read. And it's also good for nostalgia. Sure, Nebraska will always be one of the most powerful programs in college football, along with teams like, and I quote, Florida State, Michigan, Notre Dame. But beginning the next fall, the Cornhuskers will be part of the pack fighting with, and I quote, Florida again, as if 2006, 2008 didn't happen. Tennessee, Michigan, Syracuse, Miami, Kansas State, and no smoke, Northwestern. Okay. I know Northwestern just played the Big Ten championship, and I know they played the Big Ten championship a couple years before, but you ain't going to Northwestern because you think you're going to play in the NFL. You're going to Northwestern because this is your best Power 5 offer. Okay. Like, it's like, why'd you go to Kansas? Same reason. The idea that 85 scholarships is going to make this thing just that much more equal. Okay, again, 95. And the thing I say about journalism all the time, we're so wrong in the moment because we don't have the benefit of looking forward in time, right? But I thought that was a lot of fun. All to say, Prop 48 changed once again in 2016, but I applauded Nebraska for being a place where you could actually go play ball and somebody wanted to help you. Now, rather than just get into the logistics and science behind what is a failed way of testing people, particularly people that don't come from a privileged socioeconomic background like a lot of Black folks, I was rooting for Nebraska. I was rooting for Nebraska when they had Lawrence Phillips. I was rooting for them when they had Ahman Green. I was rooting for them when Scott Frost was out there transferring in from Stanford. Not exactly the kind of dude that I'm talking about, but you get it. Even while Oklahoma was Oklahoma. For many of the same reasons. I'm about you. I'm about us. And it seemed like Nebraska was about winning and about us. Okay? That I think is what would have happened. So to answer the question, What would have happened? Nebraska would have kept on keeping on. Tom Osborne would probably be still coaching into the mid 2000s, right? They would have found an heir apparent. They probably would have still been running some variation of that option. Maybe it's basketball on grass, like where Urban Meyer ushered in at Bowling Green in Utah. But that's what they would have been doing. And they would have continued to recruit those players. They would have continued to go into Florida, Texas, Georgia, and California to get dudes because Nebraska cares that much about football and they want to win that badly.